10 people walked out of Harrison Caldwell's mansion in 9 months. The marble floors remembered every hurried footstep, every slammed door. His son sat by the window, 7 years old with legs that hadn't moved since the crash. Another stranger arrived. Chloe Morrison was number 11, a black woman with callused hands and a reference letter nobody read, hired because the agency had run out of candidates willing to try. She wasn't supposed to be different. She wasn't supposed to kneel down and speak to the boy like he was whole. But late at night, when the billionaire father buried himself in work and the house fell silent, something impossible began to happen in the shadows. The doctors said never. The father had stopped hoping. 10 people had failed before her. What Harrison Caldwell didn't know was that his son had been listening, learning, waiting for the moment when he would prove that miracles don't need permission. They just need someone who refuses to see broken where there is only bent. The mansion on Bellevue Avenue sat like a monument to everything money could buy and nothing it could heal. Harrison Caldwell had purchased the estate 3 years earlier, when his wife was alive and family still meant something. Now it felt like a mausoleum where the only visitors were people paid to care. The October morning Chloe Morrison arrived. Frost clung to manicured hedges and the fountain stood drained, filled only with dead leaves. She waited at the service entrance with a canvas bag over her shoulder, 28 years old and already carrying the kind of tired that sleep couldn't fix. Her reference letter felt thin between her fingers, mentioning nothing about the 5 years she spent volunteering at Riverside Children's Center or the nursing school she'd abandoned when her mother's diabetes turned critical. Agnes, the housekeeper, answered the door with silver hair pulled tight and permanent disapproval etched into her face. She looked Chloe up and down, then stepped aside without greeting. The service hallway smelled like lemon polish layered over loneliness and expensive air freshener. Agnes handed her a folder thick with schedules and restrictions. Master Oliver takes meals in his room. You'll assist with bathing and dressing. Mr. Caldwell works downtown and returns late. Mrs. Vivienne, the grandmother, lives in the West Wing. She paused, her pale eyes offering something between pity and warning. The boy doesn't speak much. Don't make promises about his condition like the others did. They all thought they could make a difference. Every single one was wrong. Oliver's room stretched across the second floor's eastern corner, enormous and cold despite pale blue walls. Expensive toys lined shelves, still wrapped in packaging, and a massive television played cartoons with volume barely audible. Oliver sat in his wheelchair facing the window. His small frame almost disappeared into the medical equipment. He wore pajamas that cost more than Chloe's rent, and his dark hair fell into eyes that stared at nothing. He didn't turn when she entered, gave no sign he registered her presence at all. Chloe walked around to face him, crouching so their eyes were level. "Hello, Oliver," she said, keeping her voice natural, not the sugary baby talk tone so many adults used with children they considered broken. "My name is Chloe. I'm going to be helping take care of you for a while." His eyes flickered toward her face for just a heartbeat before sliding away, back to whatever private world he inhabited. Up close, she could see his father in the shape of his jaw, but where Harrison's features conveyed power, Oliver's face held only emptiness. "I know a lot of people have come and gone from this room, but I'm not here to fix you or make promises I can't keep. I'm just here to help make your days easier. If you'll let me." The silence stretched between them, filled only by television whispers and distant vacuum sounds. The first week passed in careful observation. Chloe learned Oliver would eat if she sat beside him narrating stories while bringing fork to mouth. She discovered he liked windows open because fresh air carried sounds from outside. She noticed his fingers twitched when she played old blues and gospel songs her grandmother loved. Harrison Caldwell remained a ghost in his own house, a presence indicated by car sounds late at night and closed study doors. Chloe saw him twice that first week, both times ending with him glancing at her before his gaze slid away. He was tall, late 30s, with dark hair graying at temples and features that looked harsh in person. He moved through these rooms like someone walking through a crime scene, careful not to touch anything. Vivian Caldwell appeared at Oliver's door on the 8th morning, a woman in her early 60s maintaining her appearance with fierce determination. Her silver hair sat in a perfect bob, her cashmere sweater cost more than Chloe made in months, and pearls rested against her collarbone like a declaration of superiority. She watched Chloe helping Oliver, pale eyes cataloging everything. "You're the new girl, number 11. Tell me, what makes you think you'll succeed where 10 others failed?" Chloe straightened, meeting her gaze directly. "I don't think anything, ma'am. I'm just here to help." Vivienne's mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. The last one promised she had a special touch. The one before claimed she studied some revolutionary technique in Switzerland. They all had their stories and absolute certainty. She moved closer, expensive perfume preceding her. "The boy is comfortable in his condition. Doctors have been very clear. Attempting to raise false hopes is cruel. Do you understand?" The message was clear. Don't try. Don't hope. Don't make waves. On the 10th night, after the house settled into silence, Chloe found herself unable to leave. She had seen it that afternoon, tiny movement in Oliver's right big toe when she massaged his feet. Not imagination, but actual visible movement. A flex and release lasting maybe 2 seconds, but meaning everything. She waited until all the lights went dark, then slipped back upstairs with resistance bands and a notebook where she'd sketched basic exercises. Oliver was awake when she entered, staring at the ceiling. His eyes tracked her movement, questioning but not afraid. "I saw something today," Chloe said quietly, pulling a chair close. "Your toe moved, Oliver." "Just a little, but it moved. Which means the doctors might be wrong. And I think, if you're willing, we could try some things. Nothing that will hurt. Just exercises that might help us figure out what's possible." She paused. "But your father doesn't want anyone giving you hope about walking again. He's been hurt too many times by people who promised and couldn't deliver, so if we do this, it has to be secret, and I can't promise anything will happen. All I can promise is that I'll try, if you want me to." For a long moment, Oliver just looked at her. Then, so slowly she almost missed it, he blinked twice. Deliberate. Intentional. Yes. Chloe felt her breath catch. It was the first purposeful communication he had given her. She reached out and took his small hand in hers. "Okay," she whispered. "We'll try." The exercises started simple. Gentle range of motion movements, bending his knees and ankles while he lay flat. Chloe narrated everything, explaining the purpose behind each movement. Some nights she focused on his feet, massaging soles with firm pressure trying to wake dormant nerve endings. Other nights she worked on thighs and calves, encouraging blood flow. She talked while she worked, telling stories about her mother, about kids at Riverside who taught her that strength came in unexpected forms. Slowly, Oliver began to respond with attention. His eyes followed her hands. His breathing changed rhythm. And sometimes, maybe once or twice a week, she saw it again, a flicker of movement, tiny rebellions against paralysis that said his body still remembered how to fight. By the 3rd week, Chloe brought in a small therapy ball. She placed it under his lower back, creating gentle curve in his spine. "Feel where it's touching you," she said. "Now try to push into it. Even if nothing happens, try to send the message from your brain down to those muscles." Oliver's face scrunched with concentration, sweat breaking out on his forehead from the effort. And then, so subtle, she saw his lower back press fractionally harder against the ball. Barely anything, maybe 1/8 of an inch. But movement, voluntary movement. She wanted to shout, to celebrate, to run downstairs with the news. Instead, she squeezed Oliver's shoulder gently. "Good job, sweetheart. That was amazing." Harrison caught them on a Tuesday night in early November. He had come home earlier than usual, just after 10, and voices from Oliver's room drew him down the hallway with confusion bleeding into anger. He pushed open the door without knocking and froze. Chloe knelt beside Oliver's bed with both hands, supporting the boy's left leg bent at the knee. Oliver's face was red with effort, his small hands gripping sheets. Both were so focused they didn't notice Harrison until he spoke. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" His voice cut through the room like a blade. Chloe carefully lowered Oliver's leg before standing, her heart hammering. "Mr. Caldwell, I was just physical therapy," he interrupted, advancing with his jaw clenched. "You're doing physical therapy on my son, without authorization, without medical supervision, without my permission." He moved to Oliver's bedside, hands hovering as if checking for damage. "Do you have any idea how irresponsible and dangerous this is?" Chloe found her voice, though it came out shaky. "I was just helping him with gentle stretches, nothing that could cause harm. I have training." "You have training?" Harrison's laugh was bitter. The last caregiver promised she could teach him to walk using neural realignment therapy. She had him trying to stand for hours until he was exhausted and in pain. When nothing happened, he cried for 3 days. The one before convinced him that positive thinking would heal his spine. When that failed, he stopped eating for a week because he thought he wasn't trying hard enough. He ran both hands through his hair. 10 people have come through this house promising miracles. 10 people have filled my son's head with hope and then disappeared when reality didn't match their optimism. And every single time, Oliver pays the price. Chloe felt her own anger rising. "I never promised him anything. I told him we would try, that's all. And I've seen movement, Mr. Caldwell. Real movement. His toe flexes. His back muscles engage. Those aren't miracles. They're signs that maybe the doctors don't have the complete picture." But Harrison was already shaking his head. "The doctors at Mass General are among the best neurologists in the country. What you're seeing is involuntary muscle spasms that mean nothing. And giving him false hope based on your interpretation is cruel." He moved toward the door, then turned back. "Pack your things. You're fired, effective immediately. And if you ever attempt to contact my son again, I will pursue legal action. Am I clear?" Oliver made a sound then, a small broken noise that was almost a word. Tears streamed down his face, his mouth working, his hands reaching toward Chloe with desperation. She took a step toward him, but Harrison blocked her path. "Don't," he said quietly. "You've done enough damage. Get out of my house." Chloe looked past him at Oliver, at the boy who had finally started to show signs of life. She wanted to argue, to make Harrison see what was happening. But nothing she said would matter to a man who had armored himself in grief so thoroughly that even his own son couldn't reach him. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Then she walked past Harrison, down the stairs, and out into the November night. She didn't let herself cry until she was 3 blocks away, pulled over with hands shaking on the steering wheel. Behind her, Oliver sobbed into his pillow while his father stood in the doorway telling himself he had done the right thing. The next morning, Vivienne stood in Harrison's study with coffee and satisfaction. "I heard you dismissed the Morrison woman. About time." Harrison looked up, eyes bloodshot from a sleepless night. "She was doing unauthorized therapy." Vivienne settled into a chair. "They all try something. The young ones think they'll be heroes. It's best to cut that impulse off quickly." She sipped her coffee. "I've already contacted the agency. They're sending someone new tomorrow. An older woman. Very practical. No nonsense about miracles." Harrison nodded absently, but something in his chest felt heavy. He thought about the sound Oliver made last night and the look on Chloe's face as she left. He thought about 10 caregivers before her, and wondered why none of them had ever made his son cry when they were fired. Chloe's apartment was a studio in Dorchester, 20 minutes away but a lifetime by every measure that mattered. Her mother lived 2 floors down. The morning after being fired, Chloe sat at her kitchen table with coffee going cold, staring at her phone. The agency said the Caldwell family would not provide a reference and her services were no longer needed. She scrolled through job sites, seeing positions that paid half what she'd been making. But worse than financial worry was knowing Oliver was back in that house with someone who would never push him to try. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. "Can you pick up my prescription? Insurance is being difficult." Chloe opened her banking app. Her mother's insulin cost $340 monthly. Rent was $1,200. She had $600 in savings, enough for 2 weeks if careful. By noon, she was at a diner in Fields Corner applying for waitressing. The manager looked at her resume and frowned at the gap. "Why'd you leave?" Chloe had a lie prepared, but something made her tell the truth. "I got fired. The father didn't like that I was trying to help his son beyond my job description." The manager studied her. "My sister's kid has cerebral palsy. The therapists who actually give a damn are always the ones butting heads. You available tomorrow?" She was. The next 3 weeks blurred in exhaustion. Chloe worked breakfast and lunch at the diner, then evening shifts at a grocery store stocking shelves. She was always tired, hands shaking when she poured coffee. But worse was the mental loop she couldn't escape. The constant wondering about Oliver. Was he eating? Had the progress faded? On the 18th night, her mother found her crying over bills. Margaret Morrison pulled Chloe against her shoulder. "Baby girl, talk to me." And Chloe told the whole story. The movements she'd seen, the progress Oliver made, the hope in his eyes, the anger in Harrison's voice when he fired her, the sound of Oliver crying. "I keep thinking I should have done something different," Chloe whispered. Her mother held her face between her hands. "You did what that boy needed. If his father was too scared to see it, that's on him, not you." But the guilt didn't ease. Oliver stopped eating on the 5th day after Chloe left. The new caregiver, Ruth, reported this to Harrison with clinical detachment. "He's refusing meals, taking maybe 2 or 3 bites, then turning away. I've tried everything." Harrison felt panic squeeze his chest. "Is he sick?" Ruth sighed. "He's depressed. It's common when there's been a change in caregivers they were attached to. Give it a few days. He'll adjust." But Oliver didn't adjust. By the 2nd week, he had lost 4 pounds. His skin took on a grayish tint, and dark circles bloomed under his eyes. The pediatrician prescribed appetite stimulants. Harrison found himself standing in his son's doorway at odd hours, watching the boy stare at nothing, feeling dread. On the 14th night, Harrison came home to find Ruth packing. "I quit," she announced. "I've worked with difficult children for 23 years, but I cannot help a child who won't let me. Every time I enter his room, he turns his face to the wall. He's given up, and I don't have the tools to fix that." She left, the 12th caregiver to walk out, and Harrison stood in his kitchen, wondering how everything had gone so wrong. That night, Harrison went into Oliver's room and actually looked at his son. Oliver's breathing was shallow, his cheeks hollow. Harrison lowered himself into the chair beside the bed, and for the first time in 2 years, he let himself really remember. The accident happened 2 years ago. Melissa driving Oliver home from soccer practice, when a drunk driver ran a red light. She died on impact. Oliver survived, but his spine took damage that left him without movement from the waist down. Harrison had been in Tokyo on business. The guilt had been immediate and absolute. He should have been there. When doctors said Oliver would never walk again, that guilt calcified into a barrier between him and the boy who looked at him with Melissa's eyes. Now, sitting in darkness, Harrison reached out and touched Oliver's hand. It was cold, smaller than he remembered. Oliver's eyes opened slowly. They looked at each other for a long moment. "I'm sorry," Harrison whispered. Oliver's eyes filled with tears that spilled over. His mouth worked, finally shaping a word he hadn't spoken in 2 years. Chloe. Just her name, barely audible, but it cracked something in Harrison's chest. He squeezed his son's hand and felt the desperate need to fix this. Preston Whitmore, the family butler for 31 years, found Harrison in his study the next morning. At 72, Preston had been planning retirement, but watching Oliver fade made him reconsider. "Sir, if I may have a word." Harrison waved him in. Preston stood with hands clasped. "I believe you made a mistake in dismissing Miss Morrison. A grave mistake that is costing Master Oliver his life. The words hung between them. Harrison's first instinct was anger, but he saw genuine concern in Preston's face. She was doing unauthorized therapy. Preston nodded. She was. I saw her several nights, and in those 3 weeks, I saw more life in that boy than in the entire 2 years since the accident. He smiled, sir. Did you know that? Harrison felt something twist in his gut. The doctors said his condition was permanent. Preston interrupted gently. With respect, doctors can be wrong. I observed Miss Morrison's techniques. They were gentle and caused Master Oliver no distress. Quite the opposite. He was engaged with her in a way he has not been with anyone else, including yourself. The words stung because they were true. 10 people before her all tried and failed. Every time Oliver got his hopes up, he got worse. Preston moved closer. Begging your pardon, but you were not protecting him. You were protecting yourself from watching him hope and fail again. There is a difference. The accuracy hit Harrison like a blow. Preston continued. Miss Morrison may have been overstepping, but she was helping. And Master Oliver needs help more than protection right now. He reached into his pocket and withdrew a folded paper. I took the liberty of acquiring her contact information. Perhaps instead of threatening legal action, you might consider listening to what she has to say about your son. He placed the paper on Harrison's desk and left. Harrison stared at Chloe Morrison's phone number, hearing Oliver's voice saying her name. He picked up his phone before he could talk himself out of it. Chloe was halfway through her lunch shift when her phone vibrated. She ignored it until break, then pulled it out to see an unknown number and voicemail. Harrison Caldwell's voice made her freeze. Miss Morrison, this is Harrison Caldwell. I need to speak with you about Oliver. Please call me back. It's urgent. His tone wasn't angry, just tired and desperate. She deleted the message, hands shaking, then sat there trying to convince herself calling back would only lead to more pain. But the memory of Oliver's face pulled at her. She called back from the parking lot after her shift, standing in November cold. Harrison answered on the second ring. Miss Morrison, thank you for calling back. They talked for 43 minutes. Harrison told her about Oliver refusing to eat, about Ruth quitting, about his fear that his son was slipping away. Chloe told him about the movements she'd observed, the progress documented in her notebook, the medical basis for her exercises. She explained her nursing school background, her 5 years at Riverside working with mobility-challenged kids. I wasn't trying to give him false hope, she said. I was responding to what his body was telling me. Those movements were real, Mr. Caldwell, small but voluntary. And small movements are how recovery starts. Harrison was quiet, then spoke with raw emotion. I need your help, not as a housekeeper, as a therapist. I'll hire a medical consultant to oversee everything, validate what you're doing. I'll pay you triple. Give you whatever resources you need. I just can't watch my son give up. Chloe closed her eyes. I need to talk to him first. I need Oliver to want this because if he's given up completely, no amount of money will bring him back. He has to choose to fight. If Oliver responded to seeing her, they would move forward. If not, Chloe would walk away. She agreed, hung up, and sat in her car crying before driving home to tell her mother. Oliver was lying in bed staring at the ceiling when the door opened. He didn't turn, thinking it was his father again. Then a familiar voice said softly, Hey, sweetheart. Oliver's head whipped around. Chloe stood beside his bed, eyes shining with tears, smile tentative but real. For a moment he just stared, afraid she was a dream. Then she reached out and took his hand, her fingers warm and solid and real, and a sound came out of him that was half sob, half laugh. I'm here, she whispered. I'm so sorry I left, but I'm here now if you want me to be, if you still want to try. Oliver's mouth worked, trying to form words locked inside him. His eyes darted to the doorway where his father stood watching, then back to Chloe. With tremendous effort, pushing through years of silence, he managed 2 words. Help me. They were barely audible, scratchy, but the most beautiful sounds Chloe had ever heard. She looked at Harrison, who nodded, his own eyes wet. "Okay, we'll help you. But it's going to be hard work and take time, and I can't promise you'll walk. All I can promise is we'll try our absolute best. Is that enough?" Oliver nodded, and for the first time in 3 weeks, he smiled. Small and fragile, but real. Harrison stepped forward, coming to the other side of Oliver's bed, placing his hand on his son's shoulder. "I'm sorry I sent Chloe away. I was scared and stupid, and I hurt you. I won't make that mistake again. Whatever you need, we're going to figure this out together, as a family." The word family hung between them, fragile but growing stronger. Oliver's hand found his father's, and for the first time since the accident, Harrison felt his son's fingers squeeze back, weak but deliberate, alive. The next morning, Harrison made 2 calls. The first was to Dr. Caleb Wright, a physical therapist specializing in pediatric spinal cord injuries. Caleb agreed to assess Oliver that afternoon. The second was to a lawyer who drew up a contract making Chloe an official member of Oliver's care team with a salary that made her gasp, health insurance covering her mother's medications, and full authority to make therapeutic decisions subject to Dr. Wright's oversight. When Vivienne found out, she appeared in Harrison's study like a storm cloud. "You've brought that woman back? This is madness." Harrison looked at his mother, seeing her clearly for the first time. The woman who believed worth was measured in pedigree and bank accounts, who had never asked Oliver what he needed. "Chloe Morrison is the only person Oliver has responded to in 2 years. My son trusts her. That's worth more than any credential." Vivienne's face flushed. "This is about that woman's race, isn't it? Some progressive statement?" Harrison cut her off. "This is about my son's life. And if you can't support that, perhaps you should find your own residence." The threat landed. Vivienne had lived here 40 years. "Fine," she said through clenched teeth. "But when this fails, don't expect me to help." She left, and Harrison let out a breath. For the first time in 2 years, he felt like he was fighting for his son instead of managing his decline. Dr. Caleb Wright arrived at 3, a tall man in his 40s with kind eyes that put Oliver at ease. He spent 2 hours examining the boy, testing reflexes, checking range of motion. Chloe showed him her notebook of observations. When finished, Caleb sat with Harrison and Chloe. "Oliver's case is complicated. The scans from 2 years ago show significant damage, and the initial prognosis wasn't unreasonable. But spinal cord injuries in children can be unpredictable. Sometimes swelling masks actual nerve damage. Sometimes neural pathways find new routes. And sometimes young bodies heal in surprising ways." He pulled out recent scans. "I'd like to do a new MRI, see the current state of his spine. Because if Miss Morrison observed voluntary movement, that suggests incomplete spinal cord injury, which has a very different prognosis." Harrison felt hope stir. Could he walk again? Caleb held up a cautionary hand. "I'm not making promises, but incomplete SCI patients sometimes regain function. It requires intensive therapy, can take months or years. The outcome varies. But Miss Morrison's approach, gentle, consistent, patient-driven therapy, is actually gold standard for this rehabilitation. She's been doing exactly what I would have prescribed." Chloe felt tears prick her eyes. Validation meant Harrison couldn't dismiss this anymore. Caleb turned to her. "I'd like to work with you. I'll design a therapy program, train you on techniques, monitor progress. You'll be his primary therapist since he's bonded with you. Sound good?" She nodded. Harrison shook Caleb's hand. "Whatever you need. It's yours." The MRI results came back 3 days later. Caleb gathered everyone to review them, even Oliver in his wheelchair. Oliver's spinal cord injury is incomplete. There's damage at 12, significant scarring, but the cord was never fully severed. Swelling has decreased substantially since the original injury. Some neural pathways that were compressed are now potentially functional. With proper therapy, Oliver has a genuine chance of regaining sensation and mobility. Harrison felt his throat close. You're saying he could walk? Caleb smiled genuinely. I'm saying possibly. We're talking months of intensive therapy. Possibly a year or more. There will be setbacks. It won't be a straight line. But yes, walking is possible. Oliver made a sound. Everyone turned to him. His face was wet with tears, but his eyes blazed with determination. He looked at Chloe, his father, then Caleb. When do we start? Caleb's smile widened. Tomorrow. The therapy began the next morning. Caleb designed a program starting with basics: passive range of motion, stretches, massage therapy. Chloe worked with Oliver every morning for 2 hours, afternoons for another hour. Some days brought tiny victories like a toe flexing on command. Other days were frustrating setbacks where nothing worked and Oliver cried from effort. But through it all, Harrison was there. He rearranged his schedule, attending sessions, learning exercises so he could help. He talked to Oliver, really talked for the first time in 2 years, asking about feelings and fears and hopes. They became a team working toward a goal that seemed impossible, but felt increasingly achievable. 6 weeks in, Oliver flexed his right foot on command. Tiny movement, barely visible, but voluntary and controlled. Everyone cried. Caleb increased intensity, adding resistance training and more active movements. By week 10, sensation returned to Oliver's thighs, pins and needles, feeling that was uncomfortable but gloriously real. By week 14, he could bend his knees slightly with assistance. By week 18, 4 months after Chloe returned, Oliver could support his own weight on his legs for 30 seconds while holding parallel bars, his face red with effort but his eyes bright with triumph. Harrison watched his son stand for the first time in 2 years and felt something break open in his chest. Spring arrived, and Harrison planned a charity gala for spinal cord injury research, his first social event since Melissa died. Vivienne announced she was moving to Connecticut. The night of the gala, the mansion filled with guests dressed in expensive clothes. Oliver had been practicing in secret with Chloe and Caleb for weeks, working toward a surprise. Harrison gave a brief speech about funding research. He talked about his son, about the accident and grief, and the period when he'd given up hope. Then the ballroom doors opened. Oliver appeared in his wheelchair, wearing a suit, with Chloe beside him. The crowd fell silent as Oliver wheeled to the center, stopping before his father. "Dad," Oliver said, voice stronger now, "I have something to show you." With Chloe standing beside him but not touching, Oliver gripped the wheelchair arms and pushed himself to standing. The room held its breath as he stood swaying, legs trembling but holding his weight. Harrison moved forward, but Chloe touched his arm, stopping him. This was Oliver's moment. Oliver looked at his father with eyes full of determination and love, then took a step. His right foot lifted and came down 6 inches forward, then his left, then his right again. 4 steps total, lurching but unmistakably walking, before he fell forward into his father's arms. Harrison caught him, going to his knees with Oliver in his embrace, and the sound that came out was between a sob and a laugh and a prayer. The ballroom erupted in applause, but neither heard it. Oliver buried his face in his father's shoulder. "I did it. I walked." Harrison held him tight. "You did it, buddy. I'm so proud of you." Chloe stood nearby with tears streaming down, watching father and son finally connect. This was why she did this work. For moments when the impossible became possible and broken things found ways to heal. Later, after guests left, Harrison found Chloe in Oliver's room helping him into pajamas. Oliver was exhausted, but his smile hadn't faded, chattering about how amazing it felt to stand. Harrison waited until Oliver was settled before speaking. "I don't know how to thank you for giving me my son back. For not giving up when I did." Chloe smiled, brushing Oliver's hair back. "You don't need to thank me." Oliver did the work. He chose to fight. Harrison shook his head. "But you showed him it was possible. You gave him hope when everyone told him there was none. That's everything." He paused. "I'd like to make this permanent. I want you to be Oliver's full-time care coordinator. And I want to fund a foundation providing free therapy for children whose families can't afford it. Help other kids like Oliver." Chloe felt tears threaten. "I don't need a foundation in my name, but I would be honored to continue working with Oliver and help other kids. That's all I ever wanted." A year later, the Oliver Caldwell Center for Pediatric Recovery opened downtown with state-of-the-art equipment and staff led by Caleb and Chloe as director of patient care. Oliver, now 8 and walking with only a slight limp and leg brace, cut the ribbon with his father beside him. Harrison gave an interview about his mistakes, about firing the woman who saved his son because he was too scared to hope, about learning that those society dismissed were often the ones who saw most clearly. On a warm spring afternoon, 2 years after Chloe first arrived, she and Oliver walked through the garden without the wheelchair. He still needed the brace and got tired easily, but he could walk and run and play. Harrison joined them, carrying a soccer ball and a smile that reached his eyes now. They kicked the ball around, Oliver stumbling sometimes but always getting back up. "Race you to the door?" Oliver challenged, grinning. Chloe pretended to consider it. "You know I'm going to win, right?" Oliver laughed, that bright sound of childhood joy. "Maybe, but I'm going to try anyway." They ran together toward the house. A boy who'd been told he'd never walk and a woman who refused to accept that verdict, both proving that sometimes miracles don't need permission, they just need someone brave enough to believe. Harrison watched them go and felt gratitude so profound it had no words. The mansion that had felt like a tomb finally felt like a home where healing lived and hope had won.